and welcome to a special edition of the Knitting with Cat Hair podcast. This is going to be a question and answer session. So yeah, if you're looking for a regular podcast episode, please check out episode 34. I'll leave a link up here or here. And you can also find a new episode being uploaded hopefully tomorrow. So yeah, check back later. So first of all, I'm going to announce the winner of the Q&A giveaway. So up for grabs, the winner will have the choice of choosing a sock set from Polka Dot Creek Yarns, which is a Canadian yarn company, hand dyer here. And so you'll have the choice of this birch sock set that comes with two little mini skeins, a brown one and a turquoise one or teal one, or Date Night, which is, if you love pink, this one's for you. So yeah, I will go right ahead. I did a random comment picker right before I started recording this, and the winner is Joanne Longley. So congratulations, Joanne. If you can get in touch with me and let me know which prize you would like, the birch or the date night, and I will get those to you in the mail. So first off, thank you so much to everybody who put forward a question. I received a lot more questions than I expected, and hence why I'm doing a separate episode specifically for the Q&A. And I also know, you know, for some people that's not their thing, so I figured I'd do it separately. So what I've done is I've taken, I can't remember how many comments or questions there were. I want to say there were like over 50. So I've kind of grouped them together. Some of them are similar enough that I think I can answer them all at once. So I've grouped them together. So let's get right into it. So first off, I had a few questions about the sweater I was wearing in my last episode. So one viewer asked, she said, "Love your sweater, what is the pattern?" So the pattern was the Talia by Jennifer Steingass. And just for future reference, I do put links down below to all of the things that I mentioned in my typical podcast episodes. So if you're interested in any of the project notes or anything for the Talia, you can refer back to episode 34 and just, check out my Ravelry page. So another viewer asked about the neckline of the Talia and whether or not it might be difficult to convert it to a ribbed neckline. So the sweater itself is knit bottom up. So the neckline is actually the last part that you do. So I did the called for I-cord bind off, but I had a quick look on Ravelry and I saw that there were actually several people who had converted it to a ribbed neckline. So I would think that it wouldn't be too hard to do. I'm not sure if it might involve perhaps decreasing a little bit more at the neckline to bring it in a little bit before doing the ribbing. I haven't done it myself, so I'm not entirely sure. So I would recommend, if Ravelry is accessible to you, that you just do a quick search of the projects and sort them by most helpful. So that will help you find, you know, the projects that have been denoted as being the most helpful. You usually have some kinds of tips or tricks or modifications that others liked in them, so that might be helpful. Okay, so now the next series of questions are kind of about my knitting journey and when I learned to knit and who taught me and how long I've been knitting for, etc. So first off, I learned how to knit when I was 8 years old. My mom and my grandma both taught me. My first project was a scarf. I believe it was a scarf. I don't think I actually ever finished it. I was 8 years old when I learned, didn't really take much interest in it. I started doing actually other crafts like cross-stitching. Cross-stitching became a really big thing for me when I was about 9 or 10. Anyway, so yeah, knitting kind of was never really a big interest of mine when I was a little girl. And it wasn't until I was in my 20s that I actually started knitting again. And my friend and I started knitting another scarf. And I think I actually mentioned this on episode 3 when I talk about my knitting journey. briefly, I talked about this Doctor Who type scarf that I knit up with all these multiple colors that my mom had given to me of, I think I had like red and yellow and green and blue, and I just alternated them and did like the striped scarf, and I didn't know how to weave in the ends. I hadn't learned that part. So I just braided the sides. Like I just like cut the yarn and then left it hanging off and then ended up braiding all the way along. And I loved that scarf. I wore that scarf all the time. Sadly, I no longer have it. I don't know what happened to it. I think I may have donated it. So yeah, that was the very first knitted project that I finished. And then also in my 20s, my mom, I remember she taught me how to knit mittens. She had this old pattern that she had been carrying around, like photocopied version of this mitten pattern that she passed along to me. And that's how I learned how to use double pointed needles and obviously knit in the round. And so I was just making tons of mittens for everybody. I was making all these beautiful mittens. She had gifted me some mohair, and they were like, yeah, I was combining them with other yarns, and yeah, I just made a ton of mittens. And then I kind of took a break from knitting again, went back to cross stitch, and then I think, what year was it? Sorry, I have some notes here. If you're wondering why I'm looking down, it's because I made a few notes so I don't forget what I wanted to say when I'm answering the questions. So, yeah, in 2009, yes. Okay, so I was a bad girl, okay? I was a smoker back in the day. And in 2009, I was determined to quit smoking. And so I had this habit of, like, when I was at work, I would go out on breaks with all the other smokers and we'd all have a cigarette. So I felt like I needed something to keep my hands busy. And so I picked up knitting again, and I don't even remember what I was making. I think I was making hats. Hats and scarves were my thing, I think, still. So I was knitting hats and scarves on my breaks to stop me from wanting to go outside and have a cigarette. And it worked. Like, I have not ever had a cigarette since then. So yeah, I don't know if other people have done that, but it really worked for me. And so yeah, benefits of knitting, right? And okay, and then I got pregnant with my daughter and knit here and there while I was pregnant. I knit her a little hat. I'll pop in a picture of it. It's so cute. This little hat that had bunny ears. And then once she came along, once she was born, I was knitting my stepdaughter and her little hats pretty much every year. Nothing major. A few dresses and tops here and there for children, but nothing too major until I think it was 2017. 2017, I discovered the full breadth of Ravelry, and I discovered specifically Andrea Mowry. Now, before that, I had been just knitting a whole bunch of, like I said, children's items or accessories. And when I found Andrea Mowry's patterns, they just clicked for me. I just felt like they were exactly the style that I wanted to go for. And so I became super interested in making her patterns. And I also learned about hand dyeds, which I had no idea about. Before that, I was just purchasing, either using leftover yarn that was gifted to me, or I was, buying yarn from Michael's or Walmart or whatever, like just acrylic type yarns. And hand dyes were just like mind-blowing to me. It was like, those are so beautiful and so different, and each one's unique. So yes, I fell down that rabbit hole. And so I would say, to answer the question, how long I've been knitting, I have been knitting on and off since I was 8. But most seriously since 2017. So by most seriously, I mean daily. So yeah, for the last 4 years or so. And yeah. And I think I answered all the other questions about that. Do you still have the first knitted item? No, sadly, I don't. The first Andrea Mowry, if you're curious, the first Andrea Mowry project I knit, which was quite adventurous, because really I'd never knit an adult-sized anything before. Again, hats, accessories, children's clothes, and I jumped right into her What the Fade shawl. And that has brioche in it, for those of you who are unaware. And I just dove in head first. And yeah, I don't know. I've just never been very afraid of knitting. And maybe, again, I think I've mentioned this in the past, that maybe I just don't think things through. I don't really contemplate what techniques I'm going to need to do. I just jump in. If I see something I like, I'm going to make it. And that's why I am still trying to finish my partner's sweater after 4 years. All right, so moving on. I received a question that asked me if I've been able to inspire someone else to take up knitting. So I don't know if you can see this, but my cat is totally like kneading all of my pile of sweaters over here. Sorry, sidetrack. Yeah, so I was thinking about this and I thought, I don't think I have, but I just remembered that when I used to work at a specific job, there were 4 girls and we used to get together and do excuse my language, a knit and bitch. And so basically what that would be is we would get together. I taught them all. Okay, so I think 2 of us knew how to knit and 2 of us didn't. So we taught them how to knit. Everyone knew how to knit. And then we'd drink wine. And then the knitting would really fall to the wayside. And I think so we used to do that pretty regularly. Every week or 2, we'd get together at somebody else's house. It alternated. And so I think I can say that I probably inspired someone to try knitting. I don't know that any of those girls are still knitting. In fact, I don't think any of them are to this day. I have also taught my daughter and my stepdaughter how to knit. I think my daughter was 6 and my stepdaughter would have been 8 or 9. I taught them together and my daughter ended up knitting I guess a dishcloth, essentially, just a square. She finished it all on her own and she used it for her little dolls as a little blanket or whatever, and then later on gifted it to us as a dishcloth. It was made out of like acrylic, cheapy kind of yarn, and not a great dishcloth actually at all. But yeah, so she actually finished a project. I don't think my stepdaughter ever finished anything, but they've both been given the skills. Again, I didn't pick up knitting when I was their age either. I was taught how to do it and didn't find an interest in it until later in life. So that's all we can do, right? And speaking with my mom has indicated that I've re-inspired her to start knitting again. So I guess the answer to that question might be yes then. Yeah, she knits pretty regularly now, and it's awesome because she gets it. She gets my passion. She's like the one person in my real life that I can talk to about knitting and share all my crazy purchases with and yeah, future cast-ons. Yeah. Anyways, so yeah, so it's awesome. Okay, what project is the one that you are the most proud of? Okay, this is a total cop-out answer. A lot of these answers are going to be total cop-outs, and I apologize in advance. It's just, I have to be truthful. So I'm actually proud of most of my projects. The ones that I might not consider being proud of are maybe some vanilla socks. Now, my first pair of vanilla socks I'd be proud of, and the pair that I knit 2 at a time for the first time I'm proud of. The pair of vanilla socks that I knit for the first time toe up, I'm also proud of. So where I'm going with this is that each and every project that I make, I feel like I learn something different from each project, and I'm always improving my skills. So my sweaters are getting better and better. I'm learning how to tailor them to fit. I'm learning what designs look best for me, I personally think, on myself. And so yeah, I'm like legit proud of every project that I've made. If I had to choose one, so not copying out, I'd probably choose my What the Fade shawl. My What the Fade shawl, because it was my very first large project that I ever made. and it had brioche in it. And I'm proud of that. I'm proud that I was able to master the brioche. Now, that's not to say I didn't make errors, and I had to figure out how to fix brioche as well. Now, I haven't done brioche since then. I've only done it the one time. It's not because I don't like it. I just haven't found a project that I really wanted to make that has brioche in it. So if you asked me to do brioche right now, I couldn't tell you how to do it. I'd have to look up the technique again because it's been a while. That was in 2017. And I'm also very proud of my Comfort Fade cardie. Actually, I have that one here because some people were asking for me to show some of my older projects. So, okay, this is my Comfort Fade cardie. This is the very first adult-sized garment that I ever made. Sorry, I'm not doing it justice here. It's hard to show, but it's a cardigan with this giant shawl collar. And it was made out of Madeline Tosh yarns. I did a three color fade. Actually, I talk about this in a couple episodes. I can put links if you want to hear more about them, about that cardigan. But yeah, I'm proud of that because it was the first adult-sized garment that I ever made. And it doesn't fit the greatest, to be honest. It's a little big. It is what it is. I still wear it. I still throw it on. And I love the colors. I'm a big fan of turquoise. Okay, so similarly, I got asked, what is your favorite thing that you've ever knit? And again, total cop-out. But each new sweater that I make becomes kind of my new favorite. So for instance, okay, this is Brownie, by the way. He made an appearance in episode 33. And I'll talk more about him later. He's driving me crazy because he keeps needing my sweaters. So yeah, every time I make a new sweater, it becomes my favorite. So I wore this in my last episode. I already talked about this one. The Talia by Jennifer Steingass. Love it. And then I finished my Wild Posy by Melody Hoffman. Very much love it. I've been wearing the crap out of it. And okay, down. Thank you. I still think that, the next question is, what is the sweater you enjoyed making the most of all that you've made? Now this one I think I can answer. This cat is driving me crazy. You can't see him, but he's like, now he's digging into my knits. He's very cute, but seriously, cat claws and sweater is not good mix. Okay, so my favorite, the sweater that I enjoyed making the most is my Soiree sweater, which is a pattern by Emily Foden. And this is it here. I'll be wearing it again soon. Yeah, I love it. So it's just a boxy, it's supposed to be a little bit cropped. I made mine a little bit longer. Sweater. I've made it with holding two yarns together. So it's a mohair paired with a sock yarn, actually. And both of them are by Lichen and Lace, which is a Canadian yarn dyer. And I think the reason I enjoyed making this one the most, for several reasons actually. So it was the first time I ever knit a garment, a full garment in mohair. So of course that comes with its own delights. It's very soft, very nice to work with. I love the color, like absolutely love this color. This is probably one of my favorite colors in the whole entire world. And then it was an interesting make. So you can see here, it's got this gorgeous honeycomb cable that goes up both sides. And then on either side of this honeycomb, there's this gorgeous cable. And it goes all the way up and under the arms, the honeycomb does. And then the cable goes up and over your arm. So it just looks really cute on. It almost gives you kind of like a little ruffled shoulder because it looks like the cables go right here. It's very cute. And I just really enjoyed making it. And it was my first time cabling without a cable needle. I learned how to do that. So yeah, it was a lot of firsts and I just love it. So yeah, I think that's the sweater I've enjoyed making the most. Although I've enjoyed, again, like total cop-out, but I've enjoyed almost every single thing I've ever made. There's one sweater that has caused me the most grief that I still enjoyed parts of it. Anyways, we won't go there. I didn't get asked which sweater I disliked the most, so won't go there. Okay. So then I got asked, what DIY or crafting project are you most proud of or love the most? So I already talked about what I was most proud of. So I'm going to talk about the ones that I love the most. And I think of these as different, and I'll explain. So the two projects that I love the most are a hat that I made for my partner and a hat that I made for my daughter. And the reason that I love them the most is because they love them so very much. My partner never takes his hat off, like ever. He lives in it. From the moment I knit it for him in 2017, I think it was, he's worn that almost every single day. Now in the summer, sometimes he takes it off. It was made out of acrylic yarn. It's nothing fancy. It was just I think it was a 1x1 rib. It's nothing fancy. But he loves it. And to me, that makes me love it. And the same with my daughter's hat. So I knit her this black cabled hat. And I talked about this in one of the episodes where she lost it and I had to try and recreate it with a different yarn and blah, blah, blah. And she hated every hat I made. And I made 3 hats in a week. 3 hats in a weekend. And none of them made her happy. Well, she ended up finding the original hat at her school. And she still has it, and she still wears it, and she still loves it so much. So those are my two most loved projects, and it's because the people I love them so much. Okay, so kind of carrying on with that theme, I got asked, how do you deem someone knitworthy? So to me, someone that's knitworthy is someone that's appreciative of the time and effort that it takes to make something for them. So there's really not that many people in my life, truthfully, that are knitworthy, that I consider knitworthy. Sorry, there's going to be a bit of noise. I'm filming in the basement and the furnace is just kicking on, so hopefully that's not too disruptive. But anyways, yeah, so obviously my partner and my daughter are very knitworthy. My mom is super knitworthy. I think other makers get it. They understand. My best friend's knitworthy. So yeah, that's how I kind of gauge whether or not someone's knitworthy. I've had coworkers ask me to make them blankets. Do you ever get this? Do you ever get that where people are just like, oh, you know how to knit? Can you make me this? And you're like, do you understand how long that would take me to make? Not to mention that blankets, sorry, not the most fun things to make. So my new response, this is just an FYI for everybody, little piece of information that you might want to use in your day-to-day life as well. Whenever someone asks me to knit them something, if they're a non-knitter, I kindly say no, but I also offer to teach them how to knit. They want it so bad, they can learn how to make it. Come on, a blanket. You can make a blanket pretty easily. It might take you years to finish, but the stitches themselves can be pretty simple. Anyways, so far I've had nobody take me up on the offer to teach them how to knit. But that's how I say no to people. Okay. What is the one pattern that you would want to knit again and again and again? So I think I've mentioned this numerous times, but I've made a few ranunculi by now. So I think that's one. I will definitely make more of them. Another pattern that I just knit recently is the Wild Posy I just showed it by Melody Hoffman, and that one is so similar in fun and like interest to me, to the ranunculus. That's why I think I'm definitely know I'm already going to make another wild posy, and I can definitely see myself knitting a few of those. Like, they go by so fast and they're really fun to knit. What is one of your favorite yarns for stranded sweater knitting? Okay, so first off, I just want to say I've gotten a lot of questions about my favorite yarns, my favorite weights of yarns, favorite patterns, lots of favorite things. I just want to say, first of all, I'm not really that experienced. Like, I don't consider myself that experienced. I haven't worked with a lot of different things, so when I answer these questions, they're pretty, like, I guess they're kind of cop-out answers, because I haven't really experienced all that many. I kind of like everything. So I chose, for favorite yarns for stranded sweater knitting, I chose the Let Lopey. I knit my Talia in the Let Lopey. That was, oh gosh, you're gonna let me have my sweater? Okay, the sweater here, this is Let Lopey. The reason I like the Let Lopey is, first off, it's very affordable. It's rustic, it's 100% wool, it's an Icelandic wool. It's really warm, and up here in Sudbury, northern Canada, we get cold winters usually. So I like that it's nice and warm. It comes in a large array of colors, which is amazing too. And it's Aran weight, so it knits up really quickly. So yeah, I think if I had to choose one right now, the Let Lopey is what I'd be going with for my favorite yarn for stranded sweater knitting. So then I got asked what your favorite yarn in specific weight is. So I don't really have a favorite yarn overall. I like to try different yarns. I like to try different weights. More recently, I'm preferring non-superwash over superwash, although I do have still lots of superwash yarns in my stash, and I will be knitting with them. For new yarns, I'm definitely tending to go towards 100% wools or unique blends. I'm really enjoying trying different breeds and seeing the differences between them. So like a blue-faced Leicester versus a merino, Gotland versus blue-faced Leicester. So I'm finding that really interesting. Then, okay, again, favorite yarn and or dyer. I don't think I have one. I really like the Lichen and Lace. She does really beautiful colors. Natural You does really nice colors too, for like if you're talking indie dyers, Canadian indie dyers. Yeah, Natural You does all natural dyeing, which is nice. Okay, then someone asked me if I could recommend a good colorwork pattern for starters. So like, and then I also got asked for a beginner friendly in the round colorwork sweater. So I don't know that I've knit one, a beginner friendly pattern yet, but if I were to go back, so looking at the things that I've done, so even the Talia, even though I found it's not hard to knit, it's knit bottom up. It is in the round, which is nice, but again, bottom up, maybe not as beginner friendly. There's also points where you have 3 colors at once, not really beginner friendly. I would suggest sticking with a Jennifer Steingast sweater that's knit top down in the round, 2 colors. Like start with a 2-color colorwork sweater. Tin Can Knits has a bunch of sweaters too. I have to be honest, I haven't knit any of them, but I've heard that they're pretty beginner friendly. So yeah, I would go with a 2-color Jennifer Steingast or a Tin Can Knit sweater. Those would be my recommendations. And if you're not talking about sweaters and you're just talking about colorwork and starting to do colorwork, my first colorwork projects were a hat and some mittens. And I think those were great introductions, at least to in the round colorwork knitting and how to read charts. When you get into flat, so the Marie Wallen that I'm making, the chestnut cardigan, it's knit flat in pieces and it's colorwork. It's a little more, I wouldn't say it's hard. It's just you have to understand how to read charts the right way. And there's there is a right way and a wrong way to read them. And it's totally doesn't, like, I don't know, it kind of goes against common sense to me almost. Like, you read from the right to the left, when normally when we read a book, we're reading to the left to the right. Anyways, yeah, that's a whole nother thing. Okay, so who is your favorite sweater designer and what pattern of theirs is your favorite? Again, I have a really hard time choosing favorites. I've knit a bunch of Drea Renee knits, Andrea Mowry sweaters. I'm wearing one right now. Actually, this is the Wool and Honey. I showed you the Comfort Fade Cardi. I've also knit the, oh my goodness, what's the name of that one? Weekender. So I guess you could say she was my favorite. But I think none of those sweaters, and this could be no fault of her, I think it's the yarn choices I made, because they were all three of these sweaters were knit in superwash yarns that all stretched after I finished knitting them and lost their shape and what have you. So I can't really blame her, but I did move on from her patterns. I don't find myself drawn to them anymore. So now I find myself more drawn to Melody Hoffman. Like I said, I love her Wild Posy. I have her Tulip Jumper. I plan on making that as well. And then Jennifer Steingass has beautiful patterns. If you're looking for color work, I love her patterns. And I'm 100% going to knit more, because this Talia fit so nicely. It's the one and only pattern I've knit from her so far, but this was one of her first designs, and you know, I'm sure she's only improved over time, like, and this one was great. So yeah, I definitely recommend both of those designers, Melody Hoffman and Jennifer Steingass. What is your favorite knitting tool? My favorite knitting tool, this is an easy one for me, is my ChiaoGoo interchangeable needles. 100% love them. Have tried others and was very disappointed. I won't move from my ChiaoGoos now. Since I've had them, I'm not even trying. I'm not even entertaining new needle types. I'm 100% sold. They were the best investment in my knitting by far. Okay, next question was, what is one technique you haven't tried yet but you want to someday? And I think beading. I've never done knitting with beads before, so I think that's something that I'd definitely like to try. Do you have a dream project or pattern? Yes, I have several. So right now I'm making, as I mentioned, a Marie Wallin chestnut cardigan. That one's pretty much a dream project for me. Anything I consider an heirloom is a dream project for me. So I really want to do some kind of an all over cable heirloom sweater at some point. And I may want to make, like, perhaps is it Sitzel Hoivik? I'll pop pictures in of who I'm talking about. I'd really like to make one of her intricate, maybe jackets or something like that. Something that takes a long time and that takes like a lot of thought and effort, and I can keep it for the rest of my life and pass it along and hope my children don't just donate it on me. Okay, have you tried the Weave and Steven technique for weaving in your ends? I don't know if I have, because I don't know what he does differently. I'm assuming I think I've heard of that. That's Stephen West's technique. I don't know exactly what it means, but I've been using Marie Wallin's technique of weaving in as I knit. So I don't know if they're the same, or I'm not sure. Okay, this this question can take a while to answer. So a viewer asked, in your experience, how do Nutidin, Let Lopey, and Marie Wallin yarns compare? I'm interested in ease to work with, ratio of quality versus price, choice of colors, etc. Okay, so Nutidin, for those of you who don't know, is an unspun Swedish fiber. Let Lopey is an Icelandic Aran weight yarn. And Marie Wallin yarns, so I'm using her British breeds to make the chestnut right now, and those are kind of a combination of British breeds of sheep. Okay, so and it's a fingering weight. So they're all different weights. So the Nutidin is more like a lace weight. Ease to work with. I would say the Let Lopi and the Marie Wallin yarns are probably easiest to work with just because they're like a regular yarn, whereas the Nutiden, being unspun, has a bit of a learning curve associated with it when you're first trying it out. It tends to break pretty easily. Yeah, well worth it though. Well worth it. All three of these yarns I love. Love, love, love. Quality, I can't really speak to the quality because I'm still, like, I've only just finished my first sweater out of Nutiden and Let Lopi, and the Marie Wallin's not finished yet, so I haven't had time to wear them and see how they last. I will say that the Let Lopi definitely feels durable. It's a very rustic yarn. Nutiden would be the second most rustic, and then Marie Wallin would be probably the more, like, the softest. Price-wise, Marie Wallin's definitely the most expensive. It's incredibly expensive. I probably won't knit with it again. This is a one-time shot for me. It was an investment. Nutiden would be the second most expensive, and like I've explained, Let Lopi is very affordable. Choice of colors. So Marie Wallin has 20 colors. Let Lopi has more than 20, I'm sure. They have a lot more colors. And Nutiden is, you don't really get a choice. Like, they dye up whatever they dye up for the month, and whatever colors those are. I think there's usually around 5 colors that they dye up. Those are your choices you get, and you can't get it again. So yeah, that's kind of makes it a little tricky when you're planning a project if you want a specific color for it. Nutiden's probably not going to work for you. But yeah, I honestly recommend all three. They're for various different purposes. Yeah, I love them all. So I don't know if that's helpful. Hopefully, if you have any more questions, of course, just, lay it on me. I got asked if there's a stitch that I absolutely dread to do, and I couldn't think of any. I might have said, if you had asked me this maybe a month or so ago, I might have said a tubular bind off is something I'm not a fan of. But even then, I've recently made peace with this, and I actually appreciate the tubular bind off now. So yeah, I don't think there's a stitch that I don't like. Is there anything you don't like to knit, and why? And again, I couldn't think of anything I don't really like to knit. I don't like certain techniques. Like, I'm not a huge fan of seaming. Seaming is not my friend. I'm hoping to get better at it, but yeah, I'm not a fan of seaming. And I've learned that I really don't like knitting on straight needles, like straight wooden needles or whatever. Not a fan. No. So yeah. What life lessons your knitting has taught you? Okay, definitely patience and perseverance. I rip out all my projects over and over again and reknit all the time. So yeah, definitely need to have patience and perseverance. Okay, and then I got asked a really great question. If you could be any fiber, which fiber would you be? And at first I was like, how do I answer this? How do I answer it? And then it came to me. I would 100% be wool. 100%, no question in my mind would I not be wool, because my memory as it is absolutely terrible, and wool, as we all know, has a fabulous memory. That's such a great question. Okay, and then I got a series of questions about project management and how to manage my time and to make progress on all of the projects that I'm doing. So yeah, I'm pretty much a non-monogamous knitter. I have lots of projects on the go at all the time. So how do you prioritize your forever growing to knit list, as we all want to knit everything but have very limited time? So true. Don't we all wish we had more time and more hands? So I kind of put things, I think, in 3 categories. And I don't know if I do this consciously or what have you, but when I started thinking about it, I started thinking about why I knit certain things. So I'm a very strong believer that for myself, knitting needs to be enjoyable. So I need to enjoy it. That being said, there's always going to be obligation knits. So that's going to have to be prioritized at some point. So if it's a gift or something that, yeah, has to be made. Necessity is also another thing. So if I need something, let's say I need a pair of mittens because the snow is coming and I don't have them, I need them. That's a necessity. And then of course there's just the enjoyment factor. What do I want to make that makes me happy? Because happiness is key. And I think that's why I always have so many projects on the go, is because they kind of fit different maybe niches in my life. So some are obligation knits, some are necessity items, and others are just there for pure enjoyment. So yeah, that's kind of how I do it. So that's kind of how I prioritize them. How do you manage your knitting time on each in order to make progress? So again, I have to prioritize them first. So if it's an obligation knit and it needs to be made by a certain date, that's the one I'm going to have to focus on. So let's say if it's a test knit, I did my first test knit. That one I needed to put ahead of all other projects because I knew that it needed to be done by a certain specific date. So yeah, it's easy for me to just focus on that particular thing. All the other ones, things that are not, required or have deadlines, basically I alternate. So if it comes to a point where I'm not enjoying knitting on something, I'll stop knitting on it and work on something else, something that I know is going to make me happy. And then I'll come back to the other one, and hopefully by that point it's not such a slog anymore. I don't think I really have like an actual like time management system. I got asked about that, or planning my projects in advance and things like this. I'm 100% fly by the seat of my pants, change my mind at the drop of a pin. Like I like to enjoy knitting. So I keep things flexible and do whatever I need to do to make sure that I'm enjoying what I'm doing. But yeah, I sometimes I struggle with, especially when you have a podcast and you want to be able to show progress on something, because nobody wants to see the same project time and time again that you've put like 2 rows of work into each time you show it. Like, I get that. And so sometimes I just have to like bite the bullet and say, okay, I'm going to really focus on this particular project for the next week. And, I have projects that when I'm working, and I'm in conference calls and things like this, and they're mindless, I can work on those. So those kind of, I reserve them for that time. So I do kind of have a little bit of, I guess it's time management. It's indirect because I can't really predict how many conference calls I'm going to have on any given week. Really, like I really don't know. But yeah, I definitely have projects reserved for that. Or, like with my colorwork project, that one I have it set up in the living room, and I don't move it, or I don't really move it around. Like I like to have the table, like I like to have things set up a certain way. So I only work on that one when I'm in the living room, kind of thing. So I don't know. I guess I don't know. I just do my best to get things moving. How far in advance do you plan your projects? And do you end up going in that order, or does it change? So like I said, I've been pretty bad about like wanting to make something, buying the yarn for it, and then being like, when it comes time to knit it, I don't really want to make it anymore. So I've been trying harder to make a running list. So I have a list that I keep on my phone, just like a little note. And anytime that I see a project or like a pattern that I really like, I mark it down. And then I put beside it, then I think about like, okay, what yarn do I have in my stash that I can use for it? Or what yarn would I like to use for it? And I put that down. And then sometimes, if I buy new yarn, I add that to my list. And then I put that on my list and I go, okay, what can I make with this yarn now? And then I revisit that list and I go diving through my stash and start putting colors together and trying to plan ahead on what I might make with those yarns. But yeah, I don't have any set plans really. I just keep a running list of things I like. If you look at my queue on Ravelry, it's a joke. There's gotta be like 1,000 or more items in it. It's just every time I see something I really like, I add it to the queue. But my tastes I wouldn't say my overall tastes change, but my excitement for certain projects dwindle sometimes. So it's really best that I sit back and let things be. And then if I really, really still want to make that project, you know, a month, 2 months, 3 months later, a year later, then it's meant to be. Yeah. So do you stick to your original plan, or do you easily change and do something different? Yeah, I definitely change and do something different. I like to say that I constantly suffer from indecisiveness paralysis. So some of you might be able to relate to this. I get so overwhelmed with decisions and the worry that I might make the wrong decision that I end up sometimes doing absolutely nothing for long periods of time. And it's a constant struggle, and it's not just with knitting for me. It's like day-to-day life. I don't know why. I don't want to make the wrong decision, and then I end up doing nothing, so which gets me nowhere. So yeah, I definitely suffer from that. So it makes things challenging for me. That's why, honestly, because I've been on a yarn fast since August, the beginning of August. It's been quite a few months now where I've bought absolutely nothing except for the 2 skeins for $4 that I got at a vintage shop. Other than that, I haven't bought any yarn. And it's been really great because it's limiting my decisions, because I can only work from stash that I have. And I guess I still have to decide on the pattern, but it at least curbs the fact that like I don't have all this multitude of yarn availability at my disposal, right? I have to work with what I have. So it's actually helped in some ways. It's been good. Okay, the next group of questions is about other crafts. So someone asked me if I do any crafts other than knitting. And yes, I do. As I mentioned, I was an avid cross stitcher for quite a few years. So it's still something I dabble in every once in a while. I'll say it's not my first love anymore. For sure, knitting is my first love, and that kind of gets almost all my attention. But I definitely pull out my projects every once in a while and do some cross stitching. I do crochet once in a while as well. And I'm hoping to learn how to sew over Christmas. If my mom will kindly teach me. I have a sewing machine that I don't even know how to use. It's really sad. I come from a family of sewists, and I'm a big letdown in the sewing department. So yeah. Someone else asked me if I have any tips for starting to cross stitch. That's a great question. I would suggest starting with a kit. Just because it gives you all of the supplies that you're going to need, minus the scissors. You'll probably need your own scissors, but you'll get the fabric, you'll get the pattern, and you'll get the threads. And that way you can see if you actually like cross stitching, because it's not for everybody. And yeah, I think starting with a kit is a great way to do things. That's how I started, even as a kid. My mom got me set up with the cross stitch. I think I was like 10 or something. And it was a cross stitch Christmas ornament. It was great. Yeah, it totally got me hooked. So yeah, I would really highly recommend starting with a kit. Okay, this next viewer said, I think this is more of a request than a question, but I would love to see some of your crafts featured in a reoccurring segment. That is a fantastic idea. I will say that, as I mentioned, knitting is pretty much my first love right now. So I don't really get to many other crafts. And when I do, I actually do put them in my podcast. So there's been, snippets of crochet, snippets of cross stitch, but they're pretty few and far between. So yeah, time. Who has all the time? I want to do all the things. I just don't feel like I have the time. And I'm trying to read more too. And of course there's family. Like I gotta spend time with my family too. And it's just, yeah, it's hard for sure. I'm very envious of all those people who do all those different crafts. I don't know how they find the time to do it. So yes. If you had no time limitations, this is a great question. What other craft would you like to learn? So as I mentioned, I definitely hope to learn how to sew over Christmas when my mom comes to stay with me. And I'd also like to learn how to spin, although I think that might be a whole nother huge rabbit hole. I don't know. It looks really cool though. I'm really, really jealous of all you people out there who can spin and spin fiber and make your own yarn. That's so cool. So, so cool. Okay, I got asked when I learned to crochet. So initially I learned how to crochet in 2006. I was determined to make a daisy afghan. I'll pop a picture in so you can see what I'm talking about. I ended up making 2 of them actually. One that I gifted to my friend and one for me that I ended up taking apart. Yeah, with crochet, it wasn't like someone taught me how to crochet. It was, I saw a pattern in a book and was like, I want to make that. Okay, I'm just going to follow the instructions. And it wasn't like basic crochet stitches. It was like, I don't know how to explain it. It was a specific daisy stitch is what I learned. So I never took that and applied it to other crochet. Like I didn't learn, like, you know, with knitting, you learn the basic knitting stitch and then you kind of make different patterns from there. It was like, do this, follow these instructions to make these daisies. And that was it. I didn't understand what a single crochet was. If you asked me what a single crochet was, I wouldn't understand what that was. So it was kind of just like it was a total product knit, I would say, or product make. So how did I learn? I ended up teaching myself. So with the daisy afghan, I followed the instructions in the pattern book. And then later on in 2018, so fairly recently, I taught myself how to crochet using YouTube videos. I made a hat. That was my first project. And then in 2020, I made some granny squares because I had to figure out what to do with all my leftover fingering weight yarns. So I started making granny squares. And then I made my very first finished crocheted garment, and still to date, my only one, in 2020. And that was the Veer T. And it was a kit that I got from We Are Knitters. So yeah, I don't do crochet too much. I got asked when was the last time you crocheted. It was in April. This past April, I crocheted a baby blanket for our neighbors who were expecting their first child. And that was really fun. It blows my mind how quickly crochet goes compared to knitting. Oh my goodness, it's so much faster. It's pretty cool. Yeah, and you know, like, my best friend is an avid crocheter. She knows how to knit as well, but she's all about the crochet, and it's just, she whips stuff up. It's crazy. And there's so many rabbit holes to fall down with crochet too. Like really, it's definitely something I want to explore more. And when I look through patterns on Ravelry, I don't discriminate between knitting or crochet. I'll look at both because, yeah, I feel like I at least understand the basic. I can do a crochet, a single crochet and a double crochet. So, you know, and YouTube is a godsend, man. You can learn anything on YouTube. Okay, now we will move on to some questions about my cats. So I got asked, have you ever knit anything with cat hair? And my answer to this is all the time, but not intentionally. I have 5 cats. And their hair is in everything. And that's hence the name of the podcast, Knitting with Cat Hair. I just, yeah, I understand that you can. I've seen that you can actually spin cat fiber hair into yarn. I know it's been done. I've seen it mentioned online for sure. And you can do that with dog hair too, apparently. But no, I've never done that. What breed of cats do you have and what are their names? We have 5 cats. They're pretty much all rescues. And so they're all mixed breeds. Like what do you call them? Mutts? Like, yeah, they're not like purebred cats or anything like that. So their names are, actually, I'll go through because I got asked how old they are and how I acquired them, if any of them are related. None of them are related. So maybe I'll go through and talk about each cat and how we got them. So we'll start with the first cat that we got, which is Pete. He is a black fluffy cat. He is 8 years old now. We got him from Pet Save, which is a local, like no-kill cat shelter. And the story behind him is he was my birthday present one year. And he was a litter of kittens that was brought to Pet Save, and the mother had been killed by a dog. So that's his story. He's a big sweetheart. He's so well-mannered and just a big sweetheart. Next we got Sammy, and he's a little tabby cat, very spazzy. He is 5 years old, I believe. Trying to remember the exact year we got them. It's so funny, right? I don't know exactly if he's 5 or 6. I'm a terrible pet parent. I think he's 5. So we got him to keep Pete company. Again, he was a Pet Save rescue. He was actually put up, they rescued him from Kijiji or something like that. He was 2 weeks old, and some jerk had put him up for sale on Kijiji. And they rescued him. So he's a little different for sure. He was obviously taken away from his mother way too soon. So he's a strange one. He's very spazzy. Like, he's just high energy. All of a sudden he'll just burst out of nowhere. He's not super, like, he's not like a lap cat or anything like that. He's not, I don't know how to explain it. He's very different. But he's very close with Pete. So they bonded really, really quickly. Next, we got Tom Kitten the same year. He's also 5. If Sammy's 5, he's 5 as well. And Tom Kitten is named after the Beatrix Potter story. Oh, I'm sorry. I forgot to mention. Pete is named after Pete the cat. The kids named him. If you know those stories, they're children's stories about a black cat. So that's where Pete got his name. Sammy came with his name, so we just kept it. Tom Kitten is named after the Beatrix Potter Tom Kitten, which coincidentally turned out to be pretty spot on because Tom is very chubby and he's very naughty. He's like the baddest cat we have. Really loving, very sweet, but he also does the worst things. Like, he's just very disobedient, he's super stubborn, doesn't learn. Like, the number of times I have kicked this cat off of our kitchen table, I cannot even tell you. Doesn't matter. He keeps going up. It's brutal. So that's Tom. He's obviously part tabby. And next is Brownie, who's the baby. He was the one who was in here causing trouble. We got him. Oh, sorry. Tom Kitten was also from Pet Save. What happened with him? Oh, he has a stubby tail. We don't know what happened there. He has a short tail that looks like it's been like cropped or something. I don't know exactly what happened. Don't know the story behind him. Brownie was found outside by a coworker outside in the bush at 5 weeks old, mewing. The coworker's dog actually found him in the woods. And apparently this isn't the first time that people have driven down the street and dropped their cats off in the woods. So he couldn't keep the kitten. And so we ended up taking it in. And the kids named him Brownie because he was brown. And they like to eat brownies. I don't know. When you let kids name cats, it's just funny. So he's 3. He's the baby of the family, and he's a bit of a sucky. He's a sweetheart though. And then finally we have Simba, who's actually the oldest cat we have, and he was my stepdaughter's cat over at her mother's house, and they just couldn't keep all the pets that they had. So she begged us to take him in. And how do you say no to your stepdaughter when she's desperate to find a home for her cat? So we took Simba in, who was named by Abby, my stepdaughter, because he apparently looks like Simba from The Lion King. I don't see the resemblance, but she was 3 when she named him. And he is, he's 11, I believe. He's the senior of the family. So yeah, that's the story of all of our cats. And 5 of them, I would not recommend. I would not, and they're all boys. They're all boys, and that's comes with its own issues, let me tell you. So 5 cats, they're all fixed, but there's still a handful. So yeah, we love them all anyways. But okay. And then I got asked, what made you want to start podcasting? Yeah, so I started podcasting coincidentally right before the pandemic hit. It's February of 2020. And I don't know, I did it on a whim. I had been toying with the idea. I mean, just like a lot of other podcasters out there, you want to expand your connection to the community, and it's such a wonderful community. The people are just so amazing and so supportive, and just like I feel like people really, really lift each other up, and I've definitely had like a wonderful experience. Podcasting has been a great experience. I am not the most eloquent speaker. Before this, I had like pretty big fears of public speaking. And I think that was part of it too. It was like I wanted to kind of face that fear head on and just put myself out there and see what happened. And like I said, it's been absolutely wonderful. I can't imagine not doing it anymore. Like it's been great. It's been so great. And if you're thinking of podcasting, I highly recommend it. Like highly recommend it. And if you have any questions, I am not an expert, but I can certainly tell you what not to do, because I probably made all of those mistakes. Yeah, I've learned a lot over the years. Okay, I have 2 questions left, which is good because I'm going to run out of space on my camera or on my phone. So, are you in a rural area? Oh, this viewer was commenting on the fact that they had seen quite a few birds and chipmunks and stuff in my videos, and they asked if I was in a rural area. And the truth is, no, I'm not. I'm right, like, pretty close to downtown. I'm like a 10-minute walk from downtown Sudbury. Just west of it. And like we're a pretty big city. We're the biggest city in Northern Ontario. So I think our population, I haven't checked it recently, but with outlying communities, we all kind of get lumped in as the city of Greater Sudbury. We're like at, I think it's like 180,000 people or something like that. It's not a small city. It's fairly substantial, but we also have a lot of green space, which is great, especially around our house. We have across the street from us, there's a big green space, and then just down the street, there's a large area of forest too. So it's kind of nice, and I think that's why we have so many critters in our neighborhood. Okay, and then the final question is from someone who has been to Sudbury and was asking me what my favorite local places to visit were. So for myself, I really enjoy getting out. So we have a conservation area that we typically go to with the kids and go for walks in the forests. I really like doing that. Nearby, we also have Manitoulin Island, which is an amazing, it's the largest freshwater island in the world. And it's beautiful. It's like nothing you've seen. It's just gorgeous. We also have Killarney nearby, which is also super interesting and beautiful, and lots of provincial parks. So if we're talking about that kind of thing, like that's what I like to do. We also have a big, huge park basically downtown. It's on a lake called Bell Park, and there's a boardwalk that goes all the way around, not all the way around the entire lake. It goes like halfway around the lake, and you can walk from the park all the way to Science North, which is our big science center, and that's a great place to visit. So if you're a tourist to our city, I would highly recommend that you check out Science North and Bell Park if it's summer. there's concerts in the park and stuff like that. It's really cool. And then we are also we're a mining city. For those who don't know, nickel is the big commodity here, and we are home of the world's largest nickel, called the Big Nickel. So definitely something to check out if you ever come by Sudbury. Anyways, I'm about to run out of time, so I'm going to stop it there. Thank you so much for fielding or putting forth your questions to me. I've had such a fun time going through them all and answering them, and I'll talk to you all again soon. Take care. Bye.